Good evening, my dear students. I hope you have the same time as me, and I'm very glad to invite you to our anatomical lecture. Today we start. And we continue the topic about central nervous system. I am Professor Dmitry Starchik from St. Northwest State Medical University, named after Mechnikov, and I'd like to know if you hear me clearly. Please, I'm waiting your feedback as usual. Okay, so let's get started. Today's topic is spinal cord. Spinal cord is the information highway that connects the brain with lower body. Below the neck, nearly all intentional muscle movements rely on signals that travel down the spinal cord to nerves that innervate the muscles. Sensory information that enters our conscious awareness travels up the spinal cord to the brain. It means that sensory information comes through spinal cord to our brain. Injuries to the spinal cord can leave person partially or completely paralyzed, with the worsening effect on one's quality of life. It means that is difficult injuries to damage spinal cord is make people like invalid. The treatment of spinal cord injuries is one of the most lively areas of medical research today. Therapists who treat spinal patients must know spinal cord anatomy and function to understand their patient's deficits and prospects for improvement, and to carry out an appropriate regimen of treatment. Today we will study not only the spinal cord, but also the spinal cord covering protecting it. This lecture will elevate your study of nervous system from cellular level to system levels. Today we will start with the external structures of the spinal cord. Then we will look at its internal structures, and then we will talk about its development and finish with the consideration of the spinal cord protective coverings. This is the first picture where you see external features or surface and shape of spinal cord. As you see in Latin, we name or call spinal cord like medulla spinalis. But there is also a Greek name. It is myelos. What is the shape? The shape of spinal cord is it looks like a tube, and spinal cord is located in the spinal canal inside of vertebra canal. Its length is about 42 or 43 centimeters, and diameter is about 10 or 15 millimeters. As you see, the weight is it is a light organs, because its weight is about 35 grams. Spinal cord occupies only the upper 2/3 of the vertebral canal, and usually the canal is from the cranium to the end of sacrum, but as you see, spinal cord ends at the level the second lumbar vertebra. So the down lower part of the channel is empty of. There is no spinal cord inside. Instead of, we see this structure, and we call it cauda equina. What is the function functions of spinal cord? First is the conduction of information. The spinal cord, what does it mean? Spinal cord contains bundles of nerve fibers that conduct information up and down the body, connecting different levels of the trunk with each other and with brain. It enables sensory information to reach the brain and motor commands to reach the muscles and other organs. We call them effectors. Neural integration is also important function. Pools of spinal neurons receive input from multiple sources, integrate the information, and execute an appropriate output. For example, the spinal cord integrates stretch signals from a full bladder with cerebral input concerning the appropriate time and place to urinate. I hope you understand what I mean. Locomotion is the third function. Walking or running involve repetitive, coordinated contractions of several muscle groups in the limbs. Motor neurons in the brain initiate walking and determine its speed, distance, and direction, but the simple repetitive muscle contraction that put one foot in front of another over and over are coordinated by groups of neurons called central pattern generation in the spinal cord. This neural circuit produces the sequence of outputs to the extensor and flexor muscles that cause alternative movement of the lower limbs. And the last function is reflexes. Reflexes are involuntary stereotyped responses to the stimuli. They involve the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. This is a complete complex signals. They run to the different nerves and help people to react. Here the picture typical reflexes. If you burn the finger, the signal come into the spinal cord, the information transform to the third neuron, and the signals come back and muscle contracts. It helps to avoid serious damages by burning and other damages. I hope now you understand all of spinal cord function. What another structure we could find on the surface of the spinal cord? It is a surface anatomy. The spinal cord widens at 2 points along its course. This is we call this widens as a enlargements. You see here in the cervical region and also in the lumbosacral region, the diameter of spinal cord is more than in the thorax and thoracic segments. It means that is an enlargement like this. And there are two enlargements in the spinal cord. First, we call cervical enlargement. It is the first and superior one. And the inferior enlargement we call lumbosacral enlargement. This is a second enlargement in the lumbosacral region. All enlargement consist of the neurons that give the nerves to the upper and lower extremities. So here comes nerves to the upper extremities, and here comes to the lower extremities. That's why here there are more numbers of neurons inside of enlargement, of both enlargements. And you see that from the surface of spinal cord comes out the anterior and posterior roots. Here, this structure we call roots of the spinal nerves. They are located on the posterior surface, like here, and also we could see anterior roots from the front surface of the spinal cord. And anterior and posterior roots of the spinal nerves branch off from the spinal cord, and then they combined form spinal nerves in the intervertebral foramen. So here, this is the intervertebral foramen, and combined together, anterior and posterior roots form nerves, spinal nerves. Here, this is the spinal nerves. I forgot to tell you that enlargements are located in special level. We call them segments. This is the cervical segments from fifth cervical to first thoracal segments, and as well there are enlargement from first lumbar to the first sacral segments. Here, cervical enlargement and lumbosacral enlargement, they are visible in this picture. The lower part of the it has a conic shape. We call medullary cone, or Conus medullaris in Latin. This is a quite small part, the lowest part of the spinal cord, and we call this Conus medullaris. Below it, here, you see the structure from this is a spinal nerves roots from 10 lower segments, and they form cauda equina. That means the horse tail in Latin. It looks like a real horse tail because it consists of 40 spinal nerves roots and only one terminal filum. So there are 41 structures in the cauda equina. Why the cauda equina is formed? You can understand it if you see development of the spinal cord. During 8 weeks, the length of spinal cord and length of vertebral column is the same. And this is the first sacral segment, and roots come into the first intervertebral foramen in between lumbar vertebra. When fetus grows, the speed of development and speed of growth, spinal cord growth, is less than the speed for development vertebral column. So, formation of the cauda equina occurs due to the asynchronous growth of the spinal cord and the vertebral column. In newborn, you see that the conus medullaris is at the level of the third lumbar vertebra, but for adults, it is on this level. It means when the spinal cord's growth, the cauda equina forms. The spinal cord gives rise to 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Although the spinal cord is not visibly segmented, the path supplied by each pair of spinal nerves is called a segment. Take a look. Here, this is the roots of spinal nerves. They combine together, and this is some distance, let's see, between those spinal nerves roots, and we call these parts of the spinal cords as a spinal cord segments. So, a definition of the segments is that segment is a part of the spinal cord with one pair of the spinal nerves. Here you could see the part of the spine like a segment. This is a segment without the upper. If we avoid this one, so this part or small neural tube with only two spinal nerves we call segments. Here is two spinal cord segments, and this is the border between them. Two spinal nerves, pair of the spinal nerves, together with the part of the neural tube we call segments. Here is number one, and here is the number two segments. As you see, each segment has two spinal nerves and four roots. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are anterior roots, runs anteriorly, and posterior roots. They run posteriorly. So, and combined together, they form spinal nerves. How many segments we are? There are 31 segments in the spinal cord. 8 cervical segments, 12 thoracic segments, 5 lumbar one, 5 sacral segments, and only 1 coccygeal segment. Together, if you calculate, it will be 31 segments in the whole spinal cord. Usually, as you see, the segments are designated by Latin letters and some numbers. It means from 1 to 8 is a cervical segment, etc. If we take a look, on the surface of the one segment or for whole spinal cord tube, we could find 6 grooves or sulcus on the surface of the spinal cord. That is the That is the one anterior median fissure. It means fissure, not sulcus, because it is deep, very deep. Then posterior median sulcus, and paired anterior lateral sulcus here and here, as well as posterior lateral or dorsolateral sulcus here and here. The anterior and posterior lateral sulcus are the exit site for the spinal nerve roots. You see this place, spinal nerve roots come out or come in here. It is important to know the topography of spinal cords and spinal cord segments with the vertebra column and vertebra. And this is the rule, we call it spinal cord topography or Shipur rule, which is show us that the segments from the first to fourth, located at the level of 4 cervical vertebrae, the same level, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then segments from 5 to 8, and from the cervical segments, and from the 1 to 4 thoracic segments are located 1 vertebra higher. It means from here and to the 4th segment, means here, they are located 1 vertebra higher. Segment from 5 to 8 thoracic segment are located 2 vertebra higher. It means from here to here, this part. Then, because the length of spinal cord is shorter than the length of vertebra column. So lumbar segments, from 8 to 12 the lowest thoracic segments located 3 vertebra lower, it means from here to here. Then all lumbar segments are at the level of the 10th and 11th thoracic vertebra here. And sacral and coccygeal segments are located at the level of 12th and the 1st lumbar vertebra. This is the Shippo rules or spinal cord skeletotopy, because skeletotopy is a part of topography. This is a table illustrate previous picture. Here the segments and here the vertebra, and you see this is Shippo rules in the in the form of the table. Humans, like all chordates, has a metameric principle of innervation of the body. What does it mean? Each segment of the spinal cord and its corresponding spinal nerves innervate a small area of the body we call the metamere or somit. Metamere includes the dermatome, that is the skin, sclerotome, this is the bones, and meratomes, this is skeletal muscles. So each segment, each small segment innervates some part of the body, including upper and lower extremities, and these principles we call metameric innervation of the body. This is a principle which help to innervate all structure by several, usually 2 segments. Skeletal muscles of one meratome receive information usually from 2 adjacent segments. That help to understand why is destroying of the spinal cords. For example, here you get problems. Not spinal cord, but spinal nerves here. You will have problems in this part, some part of upper extremity. If you damage or injure the spinal nerve here, you will get the part of the body like here from right side. It is very important rule and principles for doctors studying neurology. Or, they deal with the problems of nervous system. I'd like also show you some clinical examination of patients who have diverse injury. When people dive in the water, especially in unfamiliar places, they sometimes have injury like here. This is the cervical region, and this is the fracture of the vertebral column, and it is also the problems. This is the damage of the spinal cord. It's really difficult injury, and people sometimes die after such injury. Please be careful and don't dive in the water in unfamiliar places. It is very serious damage. And you see, this is a level of spinal cord injury, and the extent of paralysis of skeletal muscles depends on the level of injury. If the level is here, from first to third segments, that will be no function maintained from the neck down, and people need, here this is a picture, need artificial ventilation to breathe, and they need also electric wheelchairs with a breath, head or shoulder controller device requirement. People can only move with the lips, with the tongue, and no movement of the neck muscles. Only diaphragm maybe can breathe, but it is a bigger trouble. It's a big trouble. Then, when the damage is down to fourth segments, like here or here, it's possible to breathe without electrical ventilation apparatus. From 6 to 7 level of the segment, we mean segment, not vertebra, that maintain arms and chest muscles to move, and allow feeding, some dressing, and people need usually a wheelchair to move from one distance to other. The level here or here, it is damage when patient can move with arm easy. Level from 4th to 9th thoracic segments, people can control their trunk above their umbilicus. Umbilicus, this is a part in the centrum of abdomen. And other damage up at lower to the 10th thoracic segment, even give a chance for people to walking with long leg braces, like here, or sometimes like here. So now you see why the level of damages of spinal cord is so important. Internal anatomy. If we produce spinal cord cross sections and use some special material to dye to make it colored, you see that spinal cord, like the brain, consists of two kinds of nervous tissue, and we call the gray matter. It is really gray, or white matter. Gray matter has a relatively dull color because it contains little myelin. This is the chemicals what has a white color. And gray matter contains mostly the somas of neurons, or body of neurons. White matter contains an abundance of myelinated axons, which give it a bright, pearly white appearance. It's composed of bundles of axons called tracts or pathways that carry signals from one part of the central nervous system to other. So here you see gray matter. It is two symmetric parts, and here and they combine each other in the part we call gray commissure. And white matter is here. And here. It is also symmetric substance. We have it right and we have it left part. This figure shows the relationship of the spinal cord to the spinal nerves. Near spinal nerves attachment to the spinal cords a spinal nerve branches into a posterior and anterior roots. We call this part of spinal nerves roots. So there are posterior and anterior roots of the spinal nerves. Along the posterior roots here, nerve impulses enter the spinal cords and they come in. So it means the impulses come this way. But along the anterior roots, nerve impulses come this way. And come to the organs, muscles or glandular, everything. And in intervertebral foramen, this is intervertebral foramen, posterior and anterior roots combine and join together, forming the spinal nerve. My question is, what happens if the dorsal or posterior roots of the spinal cords are damaged? I hope you guess. The patient will lose the ability to feel. No sensory information come into the spinal cords and then to the brain. No feeling, no sensory information. But what happens if the anterior roots of the spinal nerves are damaged? Take for instance this level here. Muscles will not move, and the glands will lose the ability to secrete anything. This situation we call denervation or paralysis. It's a bad situation actually. Near the joining posterior and anterior roots in spinal cord, here near this place, we could find the spinal ganglion. It is located on the dorsal root, immediately in front of its junction with the anterior root. I can add that if the root resembles a thread, then the ganglion resembles a knot in the thread. As you see, inside of spinal ganglion, we could find a lot of neurons. They have special form, special shape. We call them pseudo-unipolar neurons, and they serve as a sensitivity of the first neuron for reflex. I'd like also to recall you that a ganglion is a collection of neurons outside the central nervous systems. So if we find a body of neurons somewhere, we call it ganglion. And ganglion is a collection of the bodies of the neurons, and you see this is the soma or bodies of neuron inside of spinal ganglion. If we cut spinal cord at different levels, we find different shape and different form of the spinal cord. Да, алло, да. Да, журнал завели. Да. Так. На Кирочную отвезти. В 10:30. Хорошо. Да, понял. Sorry, I was sidetracked. Then you see the different spinal cord sections show the different shape of the gray matter and white matter. In the cervical enlargement, this is a big part of gray matter, and also in the lumbosacral enlargement, also the gray matter is thick, because it contains this is a massive accumulation, I would say, of neurons that innervate upper and lower extremities. That's why we have different shape and different thickness. Here it is thin, but in the lumbosacral enlargement it is thick. And inside we could find more gray matter than here. Here is quite large or massive, more massive gray matter substance. The gray matter of the spinal cord it is located in the central part of the cord and looks somewhat butterfly, like a butterfly or H-shaped form in cross section. The great matter core consists mainly of two left and right posterior horns, which extend to posterolateral surfaces here of the cord. And we also could find two wider anterior horns, which extend as left and right. They extend toward the anterolateral sulcus here. It is a longer distance, but here it is a short distance, but here is long. In the thorax and lumbar regions, an additional lateral horn, this one, and here, is visible on each side of the gray matter. This lateral horn contains neurons of the autonomic nervous systems, which send their axons out of the cord by way of the anterior root along with the somatic efferent fibers. It means this is a special center of autonomic nervous system. In the middle of the gray matter is central canal. This is empty space. Really, it is not empty. It contains some of cerebrospinal fluid, but usually this canal is collapsed in most areas of the adult spinal cord. But in some places, and especially in young children, it remains open. This canal is lined with ependymal cells here. This is special cells, and contains cerebrospinal fluid. In the gray matter of the spinal cord and brain, clusters of neuronal cells bodies form functional groups called nuclei. Here, this is group we call nuclei. Sensory nuclei receives input from receptors via sensory neurons, and motor nuclei provide output to effector tissue via motor neurons. So we distinguish sensory nuclei and motor nuclei in spinal cord as well as in brain. The anterior gray horns contains somatic. Let me show you again. This is the somatic motor nuclei, which are clusters of cell bodies of somatic motor neurons that provide nerve impulses for contraction of skeletal muscles. The posterior gray horn contains cell bodies and axons of interneurons, as well as axons of incoming sensory neurons. And this is the sensory neurons that help us to feel pain, tactile, temperature, etc. The lateral horn here, or lateral horns in plural, contain the cell's body of autonomic motor nuclei that regulate activity of smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, and glands. This is autonomic nervous system. Just a moment. Let's take a short break. Ready? You come back again, and let's see what kind of nucleus we are located inside of gray matter of spinal cord. This is usually this animated picture. So the first one is a marginal nucleus. This is we call intercalary nucleus or segmental reflex. They play a role as a interneurons, like interneurons for segmental reflexes of the spinal cord. Second one is gelatinous substance or substantia gelatinosa in Latin. Sometimes we call it Rowland's substance. It contains interneurons for segment reflexes as well. The third is nucleus proprius. The fourth is posterior thoracic nucleus, named after Clark nucleus. And fifth sensory neurons is named intermedial-medial nucleus. Take in consideration that fourth, third, and fifth nucleus are interneurons, nuclei of sensitive. It is afferent. They form afferent pathway which transmit impulses to the sensory centers of the brain. Lateral horns consist only one nucleus, and we call it intermediolateral nucleus. Please be informed that please note that these nucleus are located only in segments from 8 cervical to 4 to 3rd lumbar segment, and we also could find this nucleus in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th sacral segments. As I hope you remember that we designate segments with Latin letter, means the part of the level of the segment. C means cervical, T means, or TH sometimes, TH means thoracic segments, L means lumbar, S sacral segments, and CO means only one coccygeal segment. And what is the function? The intermediate lateral nucleus contains autonomic motor neurons. This is the autonomic nervous systems that regulate activity of smooth muscles, cardiac muscle, and glands. This is the organs inside of inner organs in our body. The nucleus of the anterior horns, this is a small mistake here, consists of five neurons, 5 nucleus. We call it anterolateral nucleus here, anteromedial nucleus here. This is 1 and 2. Posteromedial nucleus here. Let's see. Sorry, we have animation. It's better. It is. Oh no, this is mistake. Okay, it doesn't. Don't worry. This is only. It's a little bit confused. This is another. Actually, this is right. Then central nucleus are inside of anterior horns. I have to change the numbers. And please note that damage of the motor nucleus or damage of this area is a big problem, serious problem for patient, because it leads to a paralysis of the skeletal muscles. No motion, no patient can't move. No moving, no life. And this picture shows why these motor neurons are so important, because that is a part of segmental reflexes at the level of the spinal cord. Usually reflexes, maybe you remember this, some kind of reflexes you may be examined by doctors, by neurologists, when they take hammer. This is a special doctor hammer, and put or touch the patella region, and then this start the reflexes come into the spinal cord. Then the signal impulse come into the motor neuron, and then come back and make quadriceps muscles to contract. It is very common reflex. Usually doctors try with patients, and all of those reflex without our involved, without our conscious, so named unconscious reflex, we call segmental reflexes of the spinal cord. Another diagram show, another picture show this reflexes. This is the typical knee reflex, but here is the reflexes from the surface of our skin. For example, if we take eagle, take some needle and damage the skin, this is the reflex come here. Then this is the first neuron here. The second neuron is in gray matter, and the third neuron, that is the anterior horn motor neurons, where produce impulse come into muscles, and we get resulting contraction of skeletal muscle. And the combination of neural structures in the spinal cord form for the segmental reflexes called segmental apparatus. Segmental apparatus. It is a set of interconnected nerve structures, and they provide unconditioned reflexes, usually protective reflexes, and the morphological basis of these reflexes is reflex arch. I show you reflex arch. This is reflex arch, and this is the morphological basis of such reflexes. In spinal cord, except of two neurons, this is the first neurons in spinal ganglia, second neurons in gray matter, and the third neurons in the anterior horns. We also have some small pathways, not very long. They combine 7 or 8 segments together to produce muscle contraction in different muscles. As you see here, the transmission. Take an example that we have stimulus here. This is one segment. Then impulse come from this level, and they come 3 segments up and 3 segments down. So resulting muscle contraction will be more effective, more visible. But except of segmental reflexes, here this is segmental reflexes, sometimes mostly we have different reflexes taken in the involving other centers, other neurons in human brain. This is the brain, and usually there are the pathway inform our brain from the level spinal cord. It informs the whole brain centers about some stimuli, and then this center, this is a sensitive center in our brain, but there are also motor center. They produce descending impulses coming to the motor neurons of the anterior horns, and then produce moving or unmoving sometimes. So I'd like to show you this picture to explain that inside of spinal cord we have some pathways. They go up and down between spinal cord and brain. Да, Мария Михайловна? Я лекцию читаю. Там нужно журнал отдать Федору Викторовичу, который он привез. И его надо завтра отвезти на Кирочную к главному бухгалтеру Анисимовой в 10:30. Завтра есть занятия? Сразу туда отвези, покажи ей. Анисимова, главный бухгалтер, на Кирочную. Хорошо? Все, Маша, спасибо, давай, извини. Пока. So, and we call this combination of pathway and center as an integration apparat of the central nervous systems. It helps actually this integration apparatus help making responses more complicated than simple reflexes like knee reflex. What kind of pathways we see in the white matter? First of all, I'd like to show you three organized regions of white matter. The anterior and posterior gray horns divide the white matter on each side into three broad areas called columns. The anterior, the part, region, this is the anterior white columns, then posterior white columns, and also two lateral white columns here and here. Each column in turn contains distinct bundles of axons having a common origin of destination and carrying similar information. These bundles, which may extend long distance up or down the spinal cord, are called tracts or pathways. It means here a lot of pathways and tracts coming up or coming down. We call these pathways as a conduction apparatus of spinal cord. It provides two-way communication of spinal cord with the centers of the brain, as I said you before. And this apparatus represented by efferent or ascending, this is synonym, pathway, and efferent or descending pathways. Afferent pathways start from the neurons, sometimes spinal ganglion or sensory nuclei, and conduct nerve impulses to the brain. But efferent pathway formed by axons of nerve nuclei of the brain, and they end on the neurons, motor neurons, in the anterior horns, sometimes in lateral horns. This is these pathways go up, but these pathways go down. That is the difference. We call also efferent pathways as a sensory, but efferent pathway as a motor pathway. This is a classification of pathways of the spinal cord, extending sensitive and descending motor. There are three groups of ascending, exteroceptive, proprioceptive, and interoceptive. It means the sensitive from the skin, usually temperature, tactile, sensory, and pain. Proprioceptive is the sensory from the muscles and ligaments and tendons. Interoceptive, that is the sensory from the inner organs. Descending motor pathway usually we distinguish pyramidal and extrapyramidal pathways. What does it mean? Pyramidal, they are conscious pathway. We can move voluntarily, move our muscles, our legs, our extremities, everything. Every skeletal muscles can move voluntarily. But extrapyramidal, that is not unconscious, involuntary movement. Usually this is a special reflexes to protect our body from the damage. Take a look for ascending sensitive pathways here. It is two extraceptive pathways. We call tractus spinothalamicus lateralis and anterior. Here is a tractus spinothalamicus lateralis. That is a Latin term. Please see, it is located here and start from the proprial muscle, proprial nucleus in the posterior horns. It conducts impulses of pain and temperature sensitivity. And tractus spinothalamicus anterior is come from the proprial neurons, proprial nucleus of posterior horns, and this pathway conducts impulses for tactile sensitivity. Ascending sensitive pathways, that is four tracts, we call tractus spinothalamicus posterior or flexix pathway. It's located here, come from the thoracic nucleus or Clark nucleus. This is a special sensitivity from the muscles, tone and stretching. It is unconscious information. It's come because it's come to cerebellum, and it's this pathway located in the lateral column. And another spinothalamicus pathway called tractus spinothalamicus anterior or Gover's pathway is located nearby, and it is start from the intermedio medial nucleus in the centrum of gray matter. This also conduct impulses to the cerebellum, and it is unconscious, and this is information about muscle tone and stretching. Two pathways located in the posterior column of the great matter. Here we call fasciculus cuneatus and fasciculus gracilis. What is the difference? Fasciculus cuneatus, that is information from muscles from 12 upper segments. It means upper extremities, neck, and upper thorax. But fasciculus gracilis is a pathway from 19 lower segments. This is the lower part of trunk and lower limbs as well. So this function is the same. They conduct impulses of the conscious proprioceptive sensitive. We feel sometimes how vibrate our muscles, how the heavy the things we hold in arms, heavy or light, for example. That is the information from muscles, and this information is may be conscious and unconscious. And descending pathway, we call them two pyramidal. This is the corticospinal tracts or tractus corticospinalis lateralis, quite large part of the lateral column located with the tractus corticospinalis lateralis, and small and narrow part is located in the anterior column. Please note that this all of these tracts they maintain conscious movements of the trunk and limbs. That is very important tracts. And some of descending motor pathway, we call them extrapyramidal because they are unconscious. No, we can't do that. We can't move some muscles. This is some kind of unconditioned reflexes, we call. And there are five extrapyramidal tracts. Tractus rubrospinalis, tractus tectospinalis, tractus vestibulospinalis, and tractus reticulospinalis and olivospinalis. All of them come in different part of white matter spinal cord. Okay. Development. This is the picture show how spinal cord develops, and you see that it comes from the ectoderm. This is the first layer of embryo layer, and then it forms neural plate and neural crest. Then it form neural fold and groove, and then it's form the neural tube here. That is the stages of neural or spinal cord formation. Sometimes when something went wrong, we would find this disease and called spinal hernia. Usually it is located connected with children. And three coverings. The first and rigid covering we call dura mater. The second is arachnoid mater. And the third, this is a blue one. And the third we call pia mater. This is a pink. So there are three covering layers on the for the spinal cord. Between them, this is here visible pia mater, arachnoid mater, and dura mater. Sometimes we call the three coverings like meninges, and here is a Latin name of this covering, and it is native specimens. You see the small pia mater here, and then this is the arachnoid mater here, and dura mater is the rigid and strong covering here. Between covering we could find spaces, epidural spaces here, subdural spaces between dura mater and arachnoida, then subarachnoidal spaces between arachnoida and pia mater here, and this is all. Usually this is some of procedure, spinal tap or lumbar puncture, which is carried out to collect cerebrospinal fluid for diagnosis purposes. That is all for now, my friend, and I hope you have questions. Please don't hesitate to ask it. Questions? No questions. Okay. Then wish you good evening and good nice evening, and hope to see next week. Bye bye, my friend. Sorry? Okay, I see. What is the notochord, please? Notochord. I don't know what is it. This is maybe you mean this note, spinal cord. Spinal cord, not notochord. It is a wrong name. Now the questions. No. Okay. See you next week. Goodbye, my friends.